There are a lot of things to get good at in Gravedigger. Aiming, mining, holding corners, picking loadouts, supporting your team. The list goes on and on and on. But one skill that I don't think gets talked about enough is what to do when you see these guys on the enemy team. Shock Troopers. They have more health, better weapons, and frankly enough firepower to completely change the flow of a match. There's a reason Shock Trooper platforms are some of the most defended areas on the map. Letting the enemy team get one of those kits is more than bad news. But they're not invincible. Far from it. In fact, being a Shock Trooper means you're now number 1 on the enemy team's hit list, second to only the Dreadnought. Because of that, Shock Troopers usually play very cautiously. They'll play around teammates, hold strong positions, and avoid fights they don't need to take. So if you want to kill one, especially if they're a good player, you can't just rely on them making a mistake. You need to know how to force one. So before we talk about each Shock Trooper individually, let's go over a few general rules that apply to all of them. Rule number 1. Work with your team. I know this sounds like a pretty basic point that applies to any team-based game, but when it comes to dealing with Shock Troopers, it's absolutely crucial. Do not fight these guys one-on-one, you are going to die. Instead, if you see one, tell your team. Treat them like a mini Dreadnought situation. The less time they spend on the battlefield, the easier the match becomes for your team. And if you see your teammates already fighting one, help them. That one extra bullet from you could be the difference between the Shock Trooper surviving with 20 health or finally going down. Yes, you can choose a loadout specifically for shock hunting, but in my opinion, unless you're playing a modifier like Elite Reinforcements, where there are just so many Shock Troopers that just won't die, you're usually better picking a loadout that helps the match overall. Rule number 2. Fight them on your terms. Something people don't always realize in shooters is that if you don't think you can win a fight, you can just not take it. Every Shock Trooper has a type of fight they're trying to force. Flame Troopers and Trench Troopers want tight spaces, Anti-Material Troopers want long sidelines, Bulwark Troopers want a mounted position, Geist Troopers want isolated players, Radio Troopers want teammates around them. You see what I mean? Every one of these guys needs something to fully benefit from their kit. So your job is to deny that something as much as possible. And because this is Gravedigger, you're not always stuck in the terrain the map gives you. You have a mining pick, so use it. Mine new routes, create flanks, remove their cover, or simply leave a bad angle entirely. Rule number 3. Take advantage of certain weapons. Shock Troopers have 300 health, which sounds like a lot, and to be fair, it is. But depending on what weapon you're using, that extra 100 health doesn't always change the fight as much as you might think. Some rifles already deal enough damage that a regular 2-shot kill against a regular player still is a 2-shot kill against Shock Troopers. So if you're using a high damage rifle, don't panic just because they have more health. Just shoot them as you would a regular player. I personally use the Prince since it does the exact 300 damage needed to kill a Shock Trooper. Shotguns are even more obvious. Since most shotguns can deal huge damage up close, they're one of the best ways to punish Shock Troopers that rely on getting close. This is especially true for the Queen, because a well-placed double shot can erase most of a Shock Trooper's health before they even have time to process what just happened. Of course, this doesn't mean enemy Shock Trooper equals equip this weapon. In fact, I'd argue some lower damage rifles could be better in some situations since they have a lower time to kill. It just means that if you can force them to the right range, certain weapons can make their extra health a lot less scary. And final rule, remove their helmets. The extra 100 health of Shock Troopers become a lot less impressive once their helmet is gone, as one clean headshot will kill them. Even if you die in the process of removing their helmet, knocking off their helmet is still a huge win. A helmetless Shock Trooper has to play way more carefully because every corner, every peek, and every random bullet suddenly becomes a much bigger threat. So a helmetless Shock Trooper is basically a ticking time bomb, which, yeah, we'll get to the Radio Trooper eventually. The Stormtrooper is the Soldat variant, and out of all the Shock Troopers, this is probably the one that feels the most like fighting a regular player. They're fast, and are equipped with an automatic weapon. The Stormtrooper's main strength is pressure. They want to keep moving, keep shooting, and overwhelm you before you have the time to properly deal enough damage back to them. This makes them especially dangerous on objectives and close to mid-range fights, where there's enough cover for them to keep closing the distance. But because they're always looking for something to do, Stormtroopers can also be one of the easier Shock Troopers to bait. A lot of them get overconfident because their weapon is basically built to mow down regular players. So use that overconfidence against them. If you have a shotgun, try to make them chase you around corners where a Queen double shot can easily outdamage them. But if instead you have a rifle, do the exact opposite. Avoid tight spaces and force them to open areas where your team can help out, usually on objectives. The Stormtrooper's weapon is one of the loudest weapons in the game, so once they start firing, everyone nearby is going to know exactly where they are. But don't just peek them for free. Their weapon may be automatic, but it's still accurate enough to punish you at range. Corner picking with a rifle can work, but if the Stormtroopers are already watching your angle, you can get shredded before you deal enough damage back. And if you do land good damage, most shock troopers will usually run once they realize they're actually in danger. So don't be surprised if they run once you've hit them with basically anything. Jaegers are also extremely useful here. And honestly, they're one of the best classes for hunting shock troopers in general. Their hunter kit is basically shock trooper proof, because that extra 100 health means absolutely nothing in the face of a tin bomb. Against stormtroopers specifically, this is even better, because stormtroopers are constantly moving and looking for things to do, usually players and not traps, which can lead to some pretty embarrassing deaths. Man traps are also great at crippling stormtroopers, since they take away the stormtrooper's biggest strength, mobility. And once a stormtrooper can't keep moving, they become a lot less terrifying to deal with. Next up is the Anti-Material Trooper, the Rook variant, and basically the complete opposite of the Stormtrooper. Whereas the Stormtrooper is built to constantly keep moving, the Anti-Material Trooper is basically the sniper from TF2. He's a one-shotting machine built to turn your head into a fine red mist. Their weapon is a literal anti-material rifle, and damage-wise, it's one of the most powerful weapons in the game. It obliterates helmets, destroys rock, decimates rook constructs, and usually one-shots anything it hits, including shock troopers. So yeah, corner peeking is definitely off the table. It's safe to say that you do not want to get caught in their sightline. Like the Stormtrooper, their gun is loud, so when you hear it nearby, try to figure out where they're watching from and stick to cover. But remember, their gun can also destroy a lot of cover, so if they've supposedly spotted you, don't just hide, just keep moving. If you can distract them long enough without dying, that alone can give your team an opening to hopefully make a play. These guys are powerful, but because the anti-material rifle takes an absurd amount of time to reload, they're also one of the easiest shock troopers to overwhelm if you catch them at the wrong moment. However, a good anti-material trooper knows this, and they'll keep their distance and play behind teammates. So if you want to kill one, you'll need to give them a false sense of security, mind to ward them with teammates, come from an unexpected angle, or wait until they fired someone else before making your move. Anti-material troopers need focus and space to aim properly, which means the closer you get, the more uncomfortable they become. If you can get right up in their face, you can force them to rush their shot. And if they miss, that reload time gives you a massive opening to punish them, especially with a shotgun. Though keep in mind, they're not completely defenseless while reloading. Anti-material troopers still have a secondary snub-nose variant of the Grey Service revolver, so if you rush in carelessly, they can absolutely pull it out and fight back. But forcing them onto their sidearm is still a huge win, because at that point they're no longer using the gun that makes them terrifying in the first place. I'd even say the Lancer can work here under the right circumstances. If you avoid their sideline and actually get close, forcing them to miss will leave them asking themselves, why is my gun taking so long to reload? Next up is the Flame Trooper, the Mortician variant, and the shock trooper that turns every tight tunnel into a very bad place to be. If the anti-material trooper punishes you for being too far away, the Flame Trooper punishes you for being too close. Their flamethrower is built for clearing tunnels and tight objectives where people don't have enough room to breathe. So the main rule here is just repeating one of my general tips. Do not fight them on their terms. Flame troopers want to fight you up close, so the only real ways to beat them are to ambush them before they can properly ignite their flamethrower, attack them from an angle they aren't ready for, or simply keep your distance. If you can't do any of those, don't fight them. Seriously, if you know a flame trooper is around the corner, sometimes the correct play is to just go somewhere else. Hell, they don't even need to aim. In tight spaces, they can just sweep the room and kill anything unlucky enough to be standing there. That being said, flame troopers are one of the few shock troopers with a resource they can actually run out of: fuel. Once their fuel is gone, they're basically stuck relying on their sidearm. You probably won't see this happen in every match, but if you can bait them into wasting fuel without dying, that's still progress. Their biggest weakness though is the fuel tank. If you damage the tank enough, it can crack, and once that happens, every shot that hits it has a chance to ignite the fuel and kill the flame trooper. This is especially important because while the flame trooper can heal themselves with mortician tools, they cannot repair the tank. Any damage to it is permanent pressure. This is why flanking is extremely effective against them. Fighting a flame trooper head-on is usually a terrible idea, because that's where the flamethrower is, but attacking them from the side, behind, or best of all, above, forces them to turn, and while firing, their turning speed is much worse than normal. Shotguns can technically work here, but this is one of the few shock troopers where I'd be very careful relying on them. A shotgun ambush can absolutely kill a flame trooper, but trying to bait one into close range can be extremely hit or miss. The safer option is usually to keep them at the edge of their flamethrower range and shoot them normally. Flame troopers can sometimes overestimate how far their flames actually reach, and when that happens, they're basically just walking towards their own demise. There's a quote from the official Gravedigger Trello that goes, "A general is just as good or just as bad as the troops under his command make him." This quote fits the radio trooper, the officer variant, perfectly. Unlike the other shock troopers who mostly stand out because of their powerful weapons, the radio trooper stands out because of what he does to everyone around him. He's basically a walking support tower. Allies around him get all the whistle buffs combined and nearby enemies get marked. Even through cover, this also includes Geist Troopers, making ambushing the sky almost impossible. A good radio trooper is usually cautious. They'll stay behind their team, close enough to give buffs and marks, but far enough back that you have to fight through everyone else to reach them. If the enemy team is pushing with a radio trooper, don't tunnel vision on the front line forever. The longer the radio stays alive, the longer everyone around him gets to play with extra buffs and information. And if you only focus on his team, you might win the fight in front of you, only for the radio trooper to retreat and start the whole thing again somewhere else. Thankfully, the radio trooper has two major weaknesses. First, the noise. Radio troopers constantly give themselves away with radio static. Even when you can't see them, you can usually hear when one is nearby. Use that sound to narrow down their position and figure out where the support is coming from. Second, they don't wear helmets. This is the breaking point for a lot of radio troopers, because one clean headshot is all it takes. Their 300 health really doesn't matter if players just take time to aim. That being said, don't treat them like a free kill. Their carbine fires very quickly and is very accurate, so he can absolutely punish you if you miss your shots or rush them carelessly. The scary part of the radio trooper is the team around him. Once he's alone, he's just a helmetless guy with a carbine and a very loud backpack. Next up is the Geist Trooper, the Jaeger variant. I've gotta be honest, the Geist is one of the hardest shock troopers to kill. After all, his kit basically turns him into the hunter class of the game. These guys are the core disruptors. They get in, get a kill, and get out before things get too dirty. Most of the time, you won't be the one finding them, as their job is to find you first. Their main ability, Hunt, gives them a massive advantage because it lets them know exactly where their target is and what they're doing. But there is one saving grace: you also know when you're being hunted, via the text that the game gives you. When you see this text, your best option most of the time is to just run. Press X, check where your base is, and start moving there however you can. The closer you are to your home base, the less likely a Geist is going to engage, as they risk overextending and dying. This is especially important if you're a shock trooper yourself. Yes, you're powerful, yes, you have better weapons, but Geist Troopers are built to specifically hunt down important targets, and risking your entire kit is just not worth it. So in short, don't be alone. The Geist absolutely hates dealing with groups, and the main reason these guys die is overconfidence. It's easy for guys to kill you if they can safely escape afterward, but if you and your team can actively chase them down, cut off their escape, or force them to fight multiple people at once, they suddenly have a lot fewer options. Next is the Trench Trooper, the Lancer variant. I see these guys maybe once every 10 games, and honestly, I doubt you'll see them much either. They're not bad, far from it. For a while, I even considered the Trench Trooper to be the most powerful shock trooper in the game. The main reason you don't see them often is because they're tied to the Lancer, and a lot of players either don't play the Lancer enough to get the kit, or would rather choose a safer shock trooper. But these guys are nothing to scoff at. The Trench Trooper shotgun is absolutely devastating up close, and it has no wind-up time like the Flame Trooper's flamethrower, so you can't exactly ambush them either. If this guy gets within his effective range, you usually don't have much time to react. If I had to put it myself, I'd say he plays very similarly to a Stormtrooper, always moving around looking for things to do, but with a shotgun instead of an automatic. And remember, this guy still has Lancer DNA, so even if their shotgun is the main threat, they can absolutely melee you, now with even more damage. So if the moment is right for them, they could absolutely pull off a team sweep if you're all cramped together. And yes, they still have the Lancer's unknockable helmet. They also like staying with their team, since the banner automatically grants morale to nearby allies. Though unlike the Radio Trooper, they usually won't play too passively because they still need to fight to get value. I'm going to be taking most of my advice from the Flame Trooper part, as the Trench Trooper is much less scary when he has to fight outside his preferred range. So don't panic just because you see one. Keep your distance and avoid tight corners. They become a lot less scary when they're not right up in your face. And finally, we have the Bulwark Trooper, the Vanguard variant, and easily the most powerful defensive shock trooper in the game. More often than not, you'll see them in only two scenarios, either in the last stand game mode or when a team has no reinforcements left and have to retreat to their home base. I'll mostly cover that second scenario. I genuinely cannot give you that many tips on beating this guy one-on-one, mainly because this guy has so many defenses. He still keeps a shield which doubles as a mount, and his machine gun has an integrated gun shield, meaning if properly mounted and facing the right direction, this guy cannot get headshotted. This lowers your options even more. And similar to the Stormtrooper, picking this guy is usually a horrible idea. Once the Bulwark Trooper is mounted, his machine gun becomes extremely accurate, fires very quickly, and can shred you before you get enough damage back. So to stay safe, treat peeking these guys like peeking an anti-material trooper. But luckily, we have our beloved Jesse Combat Rifle. The rifle grenades in this thing, though not high damage, still ensure damage is dealt. And if a team can coordinate, they can often spam Jesse grenades with no retaliation. And the moment you can force them to stop firing, either by them reloading or healing themselves, that is when they're most vulnerable. Though keep in mind, vulnerable does not mean defenseless. Bulwark Troopers still have a snub-nose variant of the Grey Service revolver, so if you rush him without thinking, they can still pull it out and fight back, but most of them usually just reload. His entire strength comes from being set up and ready, so anything that interrupts his setup is his Achilles heel. And that's all of them. Hopefully you now have a greater understanding of how to deal with shock troopers, or at the very least, how to not immediately die once one shows up. At the end of the day, Gravedigger is a team game, and shock troopers are designed to test a team's endurance more than anything else. Your team panicking is exactly what they want, and that's when they start to feel unstoppable. But if you keep the main points in mind, work with your team, fight on your terms, use the right tools, and go for the helmet whenever possible, they become a lot more manageable. There's still a lot more to talk about with Gravedigger, so chances are I'll be making more videos on this game in the future. I might even make a video on how to use shock troopers instead of dealing with them, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, that's all for me for now. If you'd like to see more content made by me, feel free to click subscribe and press the like button. See ya.